everyone? Welcome back to Talkin Shop with ShopSabre. Today's episode is one that every business owner, shop leader, maker, whoever, needs to hear it. And that's going to be not every day is a win, and that's okay. So first, I'm going to jump in with, I'm the host, Brandon Bombardo, here once again with Nick Peters.
Hello, Brandon.
Hello.
Today is going to be a great day.
Today is always a great day.
Only today, though? Every Wednesday is a great day. No, Tuesday. It's Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Jeez Louise.
You'll get there eventually.
Just looking forward to a long weekend. Looking too quickly, though.
You know today is Wednesday, right?
It is, actually. Yeah, you're right. God dang it.
Like I said, every day isn't a great day.
Every day is a winner.
Yeah, obviously, we all in business, I think, deal with ups and downs. And I think we need to talk a little bit about that, and about what do you do when the day just hits a little bit harder than you expected? We've all had those days where you wake up and you're like, man, I'm going to kill it today. And then the day punches you in the mouth.
And kills you.
Yeah, and it just is like, man, can I go back to bed?
However, one of my favorite singers, who I can't think of at the moment,
Taylor Swift,
sang that one great song, What Doesn't Kill You Make You Stronger. I don't remember who it was, though.
I don't know.
You know the song.
My favorite one is Let It Go by Elsa.
That's a good one, too.
But no, really, there's a story actually that I want to share that it's called the Shack story. I don't know. Have you heard this? Maybe you have. But it was about, I love it because it was about his stepdad, I guess. And forgive me, I'm trying to remember this. But his stepdad asked him why he sucked early on in his career. It was like after a game, he played bad or something. And it was, and he said something about the pressure, or his stepdad asked about the pressure. Well, what was it, the pressure? Which I think all of us in business feel pressure, right? We all feel that pressure. And then he said, well, come to my house. I'm going to take you somewhere. And so he came over, whatever, and they were driving him to a family who essentially had no food, no home, whatever it was. And again, trying to remember the story fully. But it's something I've remembered because he goes, I'm going to show you what pressure really looks like. And he said, you've got a good job. You've got somewhere to go. That's not pressure. He goes, do your job. And Shaq said that that was a pivotal moment, that after that point in his career, he never felt pressure again, because he realized that it's not really pressure. And I think a lot of people and a lot of employees, and I think as a leader, leading from the front is something that I think a lot of people need to practice doing. And what it means is that you're willing to accept that everybody around you is going to have a bad day. And sometimes you need to be willing to burden that bad day sometimes. And something that I've always tried to be big on is getting involved when things are going poorly, not hiding. I just try to get involved and help out. But you have to remember your employees have bad days too. And, people around you have bad days, your customers. And so even though your day is not going great, and sometimes you're getting hit in the mouth from every direction, you have to remember somebody's got it worse than you. And we're going to get into that. Obviously, I just wanted to tell that story, a little bit about the Shack story as we got started, because it's something that I think will drive this conversation. Because in pressure is self-perceived, right? So we'll talk about that. I know first we want to jump into our customer questions and comments. I know you brought a few of them here, and we're going to jump into those. And then I really want to kind of dive into this topic of pressure in your day. And just, I think we all can use a reset. So, sound fair?
Sounds great.
Cool. All right. Well, you take it away with your paper full of questions.
Perfect. Question number 1.
Yeah.
Why do you recommend dry vane vacuum versus claw vacuum?
It's all environmental when it comes to, so those who are wondering what the heck are we talking about, dry vane versus claw is two style of vacuum pumps. So with a router on a vacuum table, when you're holding material to the table, you use a pump to secure that material. And it's not in the way people think it is. It's not holding the part because it's sucking the part down. It's actually removing the pressure below the part, allowing gravity to take over. And therefore, the more pressure you can remove from below, or air below the surface, the higher the environmental pressure is. And so to answer the question, it's environmental. Why you select dry vane, which is what we use. Becker Vacuum Systems is specifically one of the most popular ones we sell. And that is going to specifically, let's try this again, going to specifically be your dry vane style. And a vane is some people call them a root, but it's part of the vacuum style. And the other alternative is a claw pump. And people often ask this question because claw pumps can produce similar results in terms of suction force as a dry vane. But dry vane technology is designed to operate in a woodworking industry, and specifically in a dusty environment or something where there's contaminants in the air. Claw pumps are really great if you can guarantee a clean environment. And, like specifically a medical field is one that people will often use a claw style pump, and it works really well. But in a manufacturing world, there's dust.
Right.
And dust is extremely bad for a claw pump because of the tolerances of the design in a claw pump. You're talking about fractions of a thousandth. And so any amount of dust will result in pump failures, which costs you big time. Because in a claw pump, like when they wear out or when they blow up, if you will, they literally blow up. Like they're just done. You're not going to fix them. You have to replace them. And so with a vane root style pump, like there's some maintenance stuff you can do to them to keep them lasting a long time, but they're designed. There's some videos out there that I've seen where guys have thrown dust right into the pumps just as a test. And the vane root style pumps, you see like this dust come flying out the other end of it. Like it can actually evac it. It's still not great for the pump, but it can do it. And obviously there's filters and whatnot on a vane root style, but like with a claw pump, if any of that dust gets in there, it doesn't evac it. It just blows up. So does that answer the question?
I think so. Okay. I don't know. To me, vacuum and hold on is still the most fascinating thing. And
it's so
CNC
awesome.
to me, I was just like, I don't know. I never understood it to begin with. And then once I did, I was like, it's the exact opposite of what I thought it was.
Right. It is pretty awesome. And people always think that like they can overpower a vacuum system. That's my favorite, is when people try to overpower them and like realize the human element of it. Like you can't push a sheet. If you have proper vacuum, you're not going to move that material.
Not even a little bit.
Yeah.
Moving on to number 2.
Cool.
Isn't using CNC cheating when it comes to woodworking?
Cheat code. I mean, yes and no. Like it's an awesome cheat code if you want to call it that, right?
I think it's just kind of, I don't know, a matter of opinion, really. I mean,
right.
Some guys think that it's cheating because they're old school.
Right. I think it's absolutely not. And if we're getting serious about it, I mean, I love the idea of calling it a cheat code because it kind of is. It makes guys like me who can't build anything with my hands because I'm just not a fabricator.
Right.
But it gives me the ability to do that stuff. And I think that's what probably pisses off a few people is guys like me can be successful without having the skill set, right?
But you still have to have, a skill set.
It's a different skill.
Design and make the parts, right? Like,
and I think that's what it is. As I said, that's why I was going to say absolutely not, because I think that mentality is kind of dated. There's no difference to me in a person saying someone who uses a hammer, is not a craftsman, just because the technology advancement, right? Like, yeah, he used a hammer. I mean, it's a set of tools, right? And like, yeah, okay, he could have done it with a rock because that's where it started, right?
Or a nail gun.
Like, but you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like, as you look at go back to caveman era, like they didn't use hammers, they built them right out of rocks. And so are you saying that now because people are deciding to use a hammer that they're not a craftsman? So this is just the new technology. So the person saying that, I think is just dated. Just because technology has advanced doesn't mean that it takes away any of the impressiveness of the nature, right? It shifts where the skill's needed. I think that's, for sure. I think you can really go a long ways with that. So, yeah, I think in terms of where we go next, like it just shifts the skill, and as you start to really look into building your future and building what it takes to build your business, I think you have to use technology. And
especially if you're trying to advance and grow your business.
Right.
I mean, if you're just happy with, I guess, where you are and cutting it by hand and doing things the old school way, then fine. But if you're really trying to grow and expand your business, it's not going to be very easy to do without automation. Right.
Yeah, that's exactly where I stand. So again, I'm going to say absolutely not. It's not necessary. But that's where I stand on it. So I need you to fix that.
I just sent a message that said help.
Hit the OK button. Thanks. The camera started freaking out on us here. So anybody listening who's not understanding what just happened, we had technical difficulties with our system, and the camera started flickering at me, and I wasn't sure what was going on. So I thought I worked through that pretty well, but
we made it.
Yeah, here we are. But no, I think, hopefully that answers the question. So
yeah, I think it did.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't think that, like you said, there's not a right or wrong answer, I guess.
I don't think so. Yeah.
To me anyways.
Like you said, design and programming has taken the places of manual skills.
You're just kind of applying your skill to a different area, right?
Right, exactly. Like, again, I think I kind of look back at my dad. My dad gets so mad about this generation, right? And I'm like, well, it's easy to be mad at them because your generation had to work harder to do things. Like, so you're mad that they aren't working harder, but it's because they're using and embracing energy, or technology.
What's the old saying? Work smarter, not harder.
Right. And,
I mean, I still feel like I don't know if you're outputting more and still having good quality, it's not necessarily. I mean, you might be working. It might be not as hard of work, but you're still doing the work.
Yeah, you just see a lot of people online who make comments about like, "Oh, he didn't build that; the machine did."
Back in my day,
they still had to program it. Like, and I always just encourage, like, when people say those comments, like, "All right, put yourself in that person's shoes. Will you get the same results?"
Doubtful.
I doubt it because you can't run that machine. So it's impressive in its own nature. Maybe it's not how you would do it, but I bet they did it in a way that they couldn't do it how you do it. So, in that, it's give and take. You have to respect other people for doing things a different way. So,
100%.
Yeah, that's where I stand. So, anyways, any other questions? I think you only have two, right?
I just had the two.
I thought you had two this week. So, jumping into this week's topic, as we kind of talked about it, a little earlier, the Shaq story and, pressures and, I think it's just about real talk, right? Some days just suck.
Yep.
Let's be honest with it. Machines are going to break down if you're in fabricating or in manufacturing. Customers are not going to call you back, or they're going to ghost you if you're in sales. We have people that listen to this that are in sales, and it's like some days customers just aren't going to call you. Some days your materials aren't going to show up. How many cabinet makers have I heard where, my material didn't show up today? Employees are going to call in sick. I think about that. I was talking to my brother about this, and we kind of were joking because the bigger you get, the more employees you have to have. And it's not because of the job, but it's because of the call-off rate.
Yep.
When we were younger, it was only like 7 to 10 of us here. And we all knew that each one of us depended on each other. So you had to, we just showed up. We were talking about that. We showed up sick. We showed up when we shouldn't be here. And people had to send us home because we just weren't going to not show up. And nowadays, it seems like you see a lot more people calling off. And it kind of puts the burden on somebody else. And so you almost need to have more people so you don't slow down on every day.
It's almost like you have to overhire just to overcome those situations.
Right. Correct.
Type of thing.
Yeah. And I think that's where those days have you feeling a little bit, down and a little bit heavier. And, I think you have to remember they're just part of the process. Getting worked up about it isn't going to change the outcome. You're not failing as much as I think a lot of us feel like we're failing in those moments. You're in it. You're doing what you need to do. And that's where growth happens. And sometimes growth is uncomfortable. And I think the key point for me is always that bad days aren't the end, right? I mean, we had days here where if I felt like every bad day was the end of it, I probably would have quit 10 years ago, They're just a test, and they're a reminder that consistency matters more than motivation, right? Because you can say how motivated you are, but if you lose that motivation because you're inconsistent, right, with your processes, you're probably going to wear yourself out.
And I think it's kind of how you handle it, what you make of it, right?
Right.
A day is going to suck, but at the end of the day or the next day when you look back on it, what can you learn from it? What can you take from it to make those situations not be as troublesome next time?
And that's exactly it. I just took a drink out of my giant jug of water here and showed everybody.
It's like a 15-gallon jug.
It's huge, yeah. But no, I think you have to reset your mindset. And I think that's a big part of it is you have to zoom out to zoom in, right?
Yep.
You have to take a look at where did you come from? Where did you come from? Where did you go?
Where did you come from, Cotton Eye Joe?
But really, you need to you can't judge your progress on one bad day.
Right.
you have to look, and I think that's where a lot of like, and I don't want to call them narrow-minded people, but that's kind of what it is. Like, I think that's what it turns into is if you literally let one bad day wreck all of the hard work you've put in, you're setting yourself up for failure constantly, because you really need to look at that month or that quarter, or what I like to do is look at year over year. Where are you at today? Where are you going?
That's what I was going to say. Like, the very small percentage of bad days you have don't overweigh the good ones. Right. Like, you can still focus on the positives. Even every bad day still has positives.
Right.
There's things that happen positively in a bad day, no matter what you want to think of it.
Right.
That just, I mean, think about those things. Like, just don't let the 2 or 3 things during the day ruin it all, and don't micromanage or focus on that.
I agree with that statement. I think, it's just kind of like when you look at like one storm doesn't define the whole season, right? I mean, spring, it's always raining around here. I feel like Minnesota rains all the time, but
some snows.
Then it snows. But I mean, you can't think of that like spring, right? It rains, but that doesn't define spring, right? I mean, there's a lot of growth that happens in spring. So what can you control, right? Like, that's what you need to focus your time on. You can't fix the supply chain today sometimes, right? It just is what it is, right? You have to focus on that customer follow-up. You have to focus on what are you going to be able to do moving forward. Shift your labor, shift your time, because you don't have the parts to do that job, which means you can't just stand around all day long doing nothing. You got to work on something. And, if you can't make chips, machines break down, right? We've had mills break down. It happens. Like, it's a great day to clean it. Clean the shop, prep files, sharpen tools. Progress isn't always loud. And I think that's where a lot of people lose track, is they lose focus because it didn't go how they wanted it to go. And
well, and I think too, like you just said, if you don't see like production of whatever product you're working on at that exact time or that day or whatever, it feels like it's unproductive, or you didn't do anything for the day, when actually you probably got some things done that you've been putting off for a while, right?
And well, that should be your goal. Is you have to stay professional.
Right.
And I think that's the hardest thing for people to hear, is stay professional, even when it's hard. Like, customers, vendors, your team are all watching how you show up when it's tough. Anybody can show up when it's easy.
Yep, for sure.
And I think that's the hardest thing for people to understand, especially as leaders and business owners, is like, of course, your good days, you're going to look like a hero. But you know what? You get judged on your bad days. And trying to be the calm during the storm, or, being the calm in the storm, is going to be a bigger asset to your business. Calling and yelling at people probably doesn't change a thing.
Probably makes it worse.
Right.
Really.
And that's where I think like people just get so overwhelmed that they explode. And as you're having a bad day, maybe take a step back, and remember, how you react can never be changed.
Well, I think going back to what you said, like at the very beginning, I think getting involved with your people and trying to help, even if there's something you really can't fix or make right in the moment, at least you made the effort to get with them and try to help, right? Instead of, like you said, just sitting in the back and letting the fire burn and not trying to help.
I agree. I mean, you have to do everything with grace, right?
For sure.
And really, I don't know. It's just, I try to think about like, I don't know, your down days. What do you do with them? Like, what do you do with a down day when you're just getting kicked, right? Like, you have to, first off, I think you have to reflect on your reactions, right? Like, first off, when you do have a bad day, at the end of the day, reflect on what could you have done different, right? Because you can learn from it. And I think that's where your down days are an opportunity for growth. And you have to ask, what caused today, right? Like, what caused the chaos, if you will? And can it be prevented the next time? And if the answer is no, it can't be prevented because it's just an act of God, well, then you're stressing over something you have no control over.
For sure.
If the answer is yes, then it's implementing change for future, right? And that's where policies and processes and things get, that's where people buy equipment and they buy software and they hire people. It's because they start to realize that, like, the chaos can be prevented. And
most of the time, there's a lesson or a takeaway from the situation that you need to look at, and like you said, take a step back and look at and learn from it. Right.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, strengthen your foundation. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And people have often looked at, losing money, right? I mean, let's talk about it. You break something, you do something, and you realize like that project was for nothing. We lost money. That's a good sign that maybe you need to do some updating to your pricing, right? Like refine your workflow, whatever it is. Dial in your maintenance, right? Your machine went down. Why did the machine go down? Did you do enough maintenance?
It kind of goes back to those things we talked about last week, right?
Yep.
Like making sure that you're charging enough to cover those types of things that are unexpected and expenses that a lot of people don't see.
Yeah, I mean, these non-production tasks build the next win, right?
Yeah.
Because I think everybody like gets so caught up on I gotta build my product. I got this product and this product, and I gotta go from here to here, and that's all I'm focused on is this. But what's happening over here before all this, or what happens after it all? And we forget about those things. But once production's down, right? I've run out of material, my machine's down, whatever. How do I get to that? Okay, well, let's go refine some of the areas that probably have lacked attention, right? Sure. I haven't given it the attention I needed to. And some of that's simply connecting with your team. And I think, that's a big thing is slower days are great for checking in with people. Being able to, I have a cousin that owns a grass lawn care company. And I always told him, like, what do you do on days where like it's raining? And he talks about that. He's like, we do maintenance on our equipment. He goes, I talk to the crew, find out where we, struggling. But like, it makes sense that your slower days are a great check-in point. And if you don't get a lot of them, that's even more important to use them. Got to share your goals. You got to realign expectations. You have to set the standard. And really, you got to find a way to like bounce back when it's all said and done. And my bounce back tips is always going to be start the next day with a small guaranteed win. Like I try to do that. Momentum matters. And so if I end a day or if today just kicks you in the teeth, you have to let it go for tomorrow. And that's where I get into the Elsa song, right? Like you got to let it go because tomorrow's a new day. And if you carry today's burdens into tomorrow, you're just compounding the concerns.
Yep. And then it's just going to snowball into constant negativity and unhappiness, right?
100%. And you have to remind yourself why you started doing what you're doing. I mean, think about your old job. I tell everybody that. Why did you start where you are at? On your bad days, if you can't look back at your old job and go, man, this is better, then you're in the wrong place.
For sure. Yep.
But
100%.
like, that's what I do. I always look at like other things I've done in my life and I look at where I'm at today and I'm like, you know what? Today sucked, but it's still way better than where I was.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what I try to revisit is that these are wins to me and, revisiting customer wins. I try to look at this, I go read stories that customers have sent. I keep them. And just so you guys know, when you guys send me emails, like I have a folder that I keep these moments where you just tell me how great and awesome my team is, or, how much you love your machine or the money you've made or the story. Like I have a whole folder full of these. And the reason I keep them is because they're milestones to the company. I want those moments for when, more than anything, I have a bad day, I can remind myself that there's been good days.
Yep,
and,
sure.
It's okay. And I think, people need to do more of that. They need to celebrate their wins. I think you need to reinvest your energy into something productive. That's another bounce back tip. Don't put your energy into areas that are draining it. And what I mean by that is if somebody is exhausting you, it's okay to step away. Right?
I had this exact discussion with Natalie last night.
Really?
Yeah, about a interaction Sunday night and yesterday and about a photo gig that I did a few weeks ago. And just, weird things about it.
Right.
She's like, look, you did everything and then some for what, was supposed to be done.
Right.
Not that it matters, but for way less money than you should have.
Correct.
For the amount of time you spent doing it. And you overproduce for what they wanted. Don't focus on thinking you didn't do enough and get mad at yourself or upset about the situation because somebody isn't understanding what they have.
And that's what I was going to just say is that I think it's so easy as business owners, as leaders, as employees, like you get the one person who complains and you put yourself in a situation where it starts to make you question everything.
Yep. And that's what happened.
Yeah. And like you can't, because if it's a constant, and let me start there. If it's a constant that every person you talk to is saying, then you have an issue that you need to address and you should listen to. But like the opinion of every person doesn't matter. Right. And I know that sounds terrible, but it's the truth. Sometimes you just run into a person who is never satisfied no matter what you do. They always feel like the world's out to get them. These negative people drain people and their circle's negative and everything about them is negative and they'll tell you how great they are.
Yep.
And greatness never has to tell you how great they are. Like, that's what I try to remind people is that if something is so great, it's going to speak for itself. And so trying to justify yourself to every person is something that is the hardest thing to do in your business because it's your baby.
Yep.
You want everybody to believe it's the best. You want everybody, but some people have a friend that is your competitor. Some people have something to gain in your demise. And so sometimes in your business, whether you're building cabinets, signs, I don't care what you do, there's somebody out there that really... Thanks for turning the light on. The light almost died.
Didn't let it.
But there's somebody out there that truly is going to want to see your business fail. Yep. Like, it just is what it is. And to wreck your day over that person or over that moment isn't worth it.
Right.
And so I think the most successful shops, makers, or whatever you want to call yourself, are the ones who just keep showing up. Especially when it's hard. Like, the hard days don't win. And you're going to have hard days, but it doesn't mean you're on the wrong path. It doesn't mean you're doing things wrong. Like, we all have wrong, bad, terrible days. Like, we get calls from vendors that we were not expecting that put us behind. We miss deadlines. I mean, we do it. It happens. Like, I try to be transparent with people. Like, it's not for lack of effort. We don't miss a deadline because we just didn't care.
Yep.
There's always a reason why a deadline is missed, right? And for us, we hit more deadlines than we miss. I will say that. And so the storm is going to pass. And yes, somebody might be upset, and sometimes it costs you money, right? The work will continue to get done, and the lessons remain, right? Like, the work's going to stay constant if you just keep working.
I think what we need to focus on is you got to where you are because of how you did things, right? So keep doing it the way that you got you there because you know that it's right.
Don't let your bad days win. You just can't. Like, I think for anybody listening to this, like, this episode applies to every person in the world.
100%.
And it applies two different ways, because there's the person who, back to the pressure statement, we were talking about the Shaq story. And the one thing about Shaq that I really want to take away from that is that Shaq's stepdad said, the pressure that you're feeling, right, isn't pressure. And he's not wrong, because what is pressure? Is somebody putting that pressure on you? Or are you self-conceiving these pressure? Like, are you saying, you know what, I'm putting more pressure on myself because of these feelings I have?
Yep.
And I think that's where, like, I talk to employees about that, where they feel like, I got so much to do. And you have so much time to do it. Right? Like,
yep.
I'm not telling you to get done in the next 2 minutes. Like, you're here for 8 hours a day. You're going to be here. That's your job. Figure out how you're going to get it done in the time that you have. Like, that doesn't mean you have put this deadline. Now, granted, there are times when you fall behind and you have a deadline and things have to happen. But, like, the vast majority of the pressure people put on themselves that causes them to miss other deadlines is because they're trying to get things done on an unrealistic time frame.
And it's kind of the self-inflicted issue, right?
Right, because there's only so much time in the day. And so people feel like they got to get everything done at the moment. What has to be done today versus what has to be done this week versus what has to be done this month, and set the precedence that I'm not going to try to force something that has to be done this month today.
Yep.
Okay, today's busy. I'm going to do it this week. I'm going to do it this month. But I'm not going to push something that needs to be done today into next week.
When I have that extra 30 minutes, an hour, I'll put some time into that and then make sure I have it done when I need to have it done, right?
But I think it's just scheduling. Like, I think that's the most important part of people's lives is you have to set a schedule. And the busier the world gets and the more that you have going on, the more important scheduling is. And understanding how you are going to get to the end goal, not just trying to wing it. Because that's the biggest thing that creates pressure, is that when you don't have a plan.
Right. Absolutely.
And I think people's anxiety gets the best of them. So, my call to action today is that if you find yourself in that situation, honestly, hopefully this episode will, like, stay fresh in your mind and you remember the Shaq story, right? What does pressure really look like? Share this with somebody that you know that is having a bad day or in the trenches right now. Maybe you got a buddy that you can tell is just getting his butt kicked. Share it with them. Maybe you got a boss that just needs to hear it. Like, I promise you, every person is beating themselves up. But I'll always, subscribe to Talkin Shop. We're real world advice here. We're trying to grow the mindsets. We're trying to help you grow your business. We're trying to help you just join a bigger community, which is ShopSabre, right? We have a lot of really great customers out there who have achieved a lot of great things over the years. And I just think you have to remember that you're not alone. There's a lot of, Nick, you're not alone.
Not alone. Never alone.
But I just think there's a lot of great advice out there if you just slow down and listen.
That's the key. You have to be able to be able to and be willing to listen. Right? I mean,
yeah. So today's motivational quote was one actually I had for last week, but my kids make everyone smile made me use that last week. But the way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. And that's today's motivational quote, because it's so easy to talk about what you're going to do or how you're going to do something, but you just got to quit talking and just do it.
Got to walk the walk, not talk the talk.
Just got to get going. Like, you got to start on something. And that means if you've said it, you're going to get the shop organized. If you said you're going to invest in some new software, if you're going to invest in a piece of equipment, stop talking about it. Just do it. Because if you would have done it last year or the year before, you'd already have it done and you'd be leaps and bounds ahead of where you are.
Yep.
But we put roadblocks in front of us for no reason, and it slows our businesses down. It slows our employees' production down, and it slows our own production down, and our mental health takes a beating.
If you haven't put that CNC in your shop yet because you've been putting it off for whatever reason, no better time than now.
Absolutely. Like I said, we're seeing tremendous growth out there. Lots of people are adding equipment right now. We are seeing a really big boom right now, and that's great because that's a good sign for manufacturing. It's a good sign for growth, which means there's more coming down the pipeline. So if you're one of those businesses that you haven't seen a whole lot yet, like, it's there, it's coming. Like, you be prepared, because if you're sitting around thinking it's not going to get better ever, I can assure you that you're going to be caught one day with, no preparation.
Get ahead of that big snowball before it runs you over.
Right, correct.
Yeah.
Don't Indiana Jones it.
Correct.
Right. But yeah, as always, I appreciate everybody tuning in. Thanks for tuning in to Talkin Shop. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Nick.
Until next time, keep talking shop.